Penguin Random House Audio presents Effortless Healing, 9 Simple Ways to Sidestep Illness, Shed Excess Weight, and Help Your Body Fix Itself, by Dr. Joseph Mercola, read for you by Dan Woren. The information contained in this book is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice and care of your physician, and you should use proper discretion in consultation with your physician in utilizing the information presented. The author and the publisher expressly disclaim responsibility for any adverse effects that may result from the use or application of the information contained in this book. Forward. You have been given a nearly flawless gift that's been in the making for over 2 million years. Your DNA, your code of life, has been refined and polished over countless generations to provide you with optimal health, functionality, and longevity. And yet, in the last 0.5% of our time as humans, we as a species are experiencing a dramatic challenge to our ability to stave off disease. The explosive increase in the prevalence of diabetes, obesity, hypertension, Alzheimer's disease, and other degenerative conditions is not a manifestation of any sudden change in our genetics. Indeed, genetics researchers would be hard-pressed to identify any significant changes in the human genome compared with that of humans from 20,000 years ago. So, what has changed? If the genetic blueprint that codes for health and longevity has remained constant, what are the factors that have been introduced that have corrupted the message from this seemingly immutable code? As it turns out, the notion that our DNA represents a fixed and immutable code is now looked upon as antiquated science. What we've come to understand is that our genetic code is actually aggressively dynamic in its expression. The very genes that were viewed as being locked in a glass case are now seen as responding, moment to moment, to any number of environmental influences. This, the science of epigenetics, opens up not only a new way of conceptualizing the behavior of our genes, but also, more important, provides a new perspective for the understanding of the rampant health issues that characterize the modern Western world. Epigenetic research reveals that our lifestyle choices, the foods we eat, the supplements we take, the exercise we pursue, and even the emotional content of our daily experiences, are all involved in orchestrating chemical reactions that activate or deactivate parts of our genome that will either code for outcomes that threaten health and pave the way for disease, or create an internal environment conducive to longevity and disease resistance. That is the gift of this new understanding of genes and their expression. The profound upside of this new paradigm is that it reveals that each of us has the opportunity to modify our own genetic expression and change our health destiny. Dr. Mercola will empower you with the ability to rewrite your story as it relates to your future health. By paying close attention to the information he presents, you will learn how you can positively influence the expression of your own DNA to improve and preserve your health and extend your life. And whether it's shifting your diet to one that welcomes fat back to the table, enjoying more sunshine, dedicating yourself to getting more sleep, or even making a point to go barefoot from time to time, each of the empowering recommendations in Effortless Healing is designed to reestablish life-sustaining and life-enhancing communication with your most precious gift, your code of life. David Perlmutter, M.D. Introduction. You may think that I have always been dedicated to health, but that is absolutely not the case. I was raised on dessert after most meals, donuts, Twinkies, chips, and ice cream. In other words, I grew up eating the typical American diet. My parents did the best that they could in trying to provide us with home-cooked meals. But they didn't know then what we know now about nutrition. As a result, by the time I was in high school, nearly half of my teeth had cavities, and my face and back were riddled with acne. I was clearly, like so many others are today, working against my body, not with it. It's a funny beginning for someone who would end up as one of the world's leading advocates for using food as medicine. Yet my experiences fueled me to help the average person, who is used to eating whatever tastes good and is struggling with chronic conditions, yet never connected these two dots. Over the last 3 decades, I have treated more than 25,000 patients as a physician, diligently reviewed a huge array of nutritional approaches, written 2 New York Times best-selling books, and built the most visited natural health website in the world that is dedicated to educating readers about proven ways to improve their health. Mercola.com now reaches 25 million readers every month. The trait that is most responsible for my journey to being a champion of high-quality nutrition is my love of reading. It was an article in Parade magazine in 1968 that started me on my current path. The article was about Dr. Ken Cooper and his brand new book, Aerobics. At that point in time, hardly anyone exercised regularly. When I went jogging back then on the west side of Chicago, people would throw rocks and cans at me because they assumed I was a criminal running from the scene of a crime. I read his book and started on a now nearly 50-year-long commitment to fitness. Of course, my views have evolved over time. I'm no longer a slavish devotee to what we now call cardio. In fact, I'm just the opposite. But more on that later in the audio. Back then, practicing medicine wasn't even on my radar. I entered college with an engineering major and changed to pre-med only after I started. I was very traditional in my approach to medicine in those early days. For 6 years before medical school, I worked as a pharmacist's apprentice. I enjoyed the job and felt the drugs I helped dispense were a beneficial solution to our patients' healthcare challenges. That indoctrination continued through medical school, even though the difference between the medical mainstream and me was already starting to surface. My fellow students nicknamed me Dr. Fiber for my dedication to fiber and its relation to gut health. My understanding of the true drivers of gut health has continued to evolve over many years of study and research. More on that in Healing Principle 6. As a family practitioner, I was a paid speaker for the drug companies and would fly around the country on their dime, hailing the benefits of estrogen replacement therapy. In the early years of my private practice, my focus was treating depression because it was such an underdiagnosed dilemma. People were clearly suffering, but the only treatment I knew of was drugs. Thousands of my patients received hope for healing in the form of a prescription I'd written for them. I didn't know better at the time. So, how did I make the transition to natural medicine? In the mid-1980s, I read a book called The Yeast Connection by William Crook, M.D. It described people making miraculous recoveries from treating yeast overgrowth. I recognized the symptoms he described in many of my patients. At this point, I ignored Crook's dietary recommendations and instead used the antifungal drugs he recommended for treatment, and, of course, that failed miserably. But in the early 1990s, I read the book again. By then, I had gained some wisdom, so this time I took his dietary recommendations to heart. They worked incredibly well and opened my eyes to the power of food, not drugs, as medicine. As I began attending health conferences, I realized that there was a wide network of physicians using natural therapies to treat their patients. As I applied these new skills to my practice, I was thrilled to see so many people getting much better using diet and lifestyle modifications. I was so convinced by these outcomes that I decided to change my practice to natural medicine and refused to see patients who were unwilling to embark on a journey to address the foundational causes of their illness. This was a serious risk to my income, as I was a solo practitioner, and I wound up losing 75% of my patients. But like most decisions in life that are made for the right reason, this one worked out really well, and my practice was soon filled by all the referrals I was getting from successfully treated patients. I eventually started seeing patients from all over the world. It was quite a shift in my view of myself, from the healer who could administer the drugs that would fix a patient's health, to more of an educator who could help people learn how to cultivate the power to heal.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?